It's just unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up.
It'll be interesting to see how the courts view his activity.
Apparently, this is not an uncommon occurrence.
You know, when payment arrangements suddenly involve secrecy, gifts, pressure, personal favors, those are just red flags.
This is stuff out of like the vigilante days of Montana. We don't want that back again.
In Montana, trust matters, but sometimes trust gets exploited. I'm Adrienna Hines, the host of Fraud Files, a podcast uncovering the scams, schemes, and fraud cases impacting real people across our state. Big promises, missing money, bad decisions, and occasionally a few "what were they thinking" moments. Each episode, we will break down how these cases started, how they unraveled, and the red flags nobody saw coming. Because when something's not adding up, somebody should probably ask questions. This is Fraud Files. Welcome to Fraud Files. I'm Adrienna Hines, and every episode we break down real fraud cases, scams, corruption, and consumer nightmares happening right here in Montana. Joining me for every episode is the state auditor and Montana Commissioner of Securities and Insurance, James Brown. James is a fourth-generation Montanan, former attorney, and now Montana's unofficial fraud hunter. Also in the studio today, we're very lucky to be joined again by Stacy Zinn, here located in Billings, Montana, former head of the DEA, operating on foreign and U.S. soils. Welcome to both of you.
Well, it's great to be back on again.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Well, let's get this party started here in the studio. So, James, I know that you are a fourth-generation Montanan. Can you tell us a little bit about where you hail from and what your background is in Montana?
You bet. Yeah, I stayed fourth-generation Montana. My great-grandfather came out of Kingston, New York. This is right out of the Yellowstone TV series. Came out of Kingston, New York, 1882, although he might have been a little bit earlier. Literally worked his way west on the railroad, came into Corinne, Utah, if you know where that is, which is one of the terminuses for the railroad, and then started running freight from Corinne, Utah, up into Bannock, Montana, which is now the ghost town for our territorial capital. And then families had a cow-calf operation, 130 some years at this point. I grew up in Dillon, graduated from Beaverhead County High School, and then went to the University of Montana as an undergrad, and decided to run for this office after serving one term on the Public Service Commission for the state of Montana. Office came open when my predecessor, Troy Downing, decided he was going to run for Congress, and I looked at the qualifications for this job and the jurisdiction of the job, and I met my qualifications pretty well. I have an insurance producer's license, which I think I'm only the second state auditor and commissioner of insurance and securities in the history of Montana to actually have the license in the jurisdiction. Plus, as stated, I ran a private law practice for many, many years and represented agriculture interests. And so one of the primary reasons I ran for the state auditor's office is because I serve as a member of Montana's Land Board, which manages state trust lands, and wanted to do some good things for Montana and agriculture in that regard.
Well, today's fraud case is going to take us a little bit off the path of agriculture, but certainly is in the vein of Montana. Stacy, how about you? What's your experience and background in Montana?
My background in Montana is I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I ran the teams up here for many years. And so I oversaw teams that we were conducting operations with local drug traffickers all the way up to middle drug traffickers, gang-related, and also cartel members that were coming into our states and preying on our communities. So I've been here for quite a while, and I have been fortunate to be able to travel all over the state and see what these nefarious groups do to our state.
Well, thanks for joining us. My goodness. This is going to be an exciting conversation today. Today, we're referring to this fraud file as the Ikeda case. This is based on Louis Ikeda, a Billings bail bondsman. So, Jim, would you please explain to us what this case is all about?
Yeah, so I think the obvious question in listeners' minds right now is, why does the state auditor deal with bail bondsmen, right, and the regulation of the same? And it's a great question. I got to confess, when I ran for this office, I didn't even know that this office regulated bail bondsmen, and so this was a surprise to me. But believe it or not, a bail bondsman is actually a licensed insurance professional. The way that bail bonds works, it's an important part of the criminal justice system, as Stacy knows. The bail bondsman is the person who essentially pays for the guarantee that a defendant will appear in court after making their initial appearance. So in return, that the person that's being bailed out can get out of jail and doesn't have to sit in jail. Essentially, the bail bondsman is a financial safety net for defendants who can't afford to pay full cash for their bond as set by a court. The fee is generally 10 or 15% of the total bail amount. That's how the bail bondsmen make their money. So say, for example, a court sets a $10,000 bail. You're going to pay, if you're the defendant, you're going to pay the bail bondsman about $1,000, and then the bondsman keeps that portion as payment for their services. So essentially, bail bonds serve as a surety for the defendant showing up, and that's how the nexus is between insurance and the criminal justice system, is the surety piece, because the bail bondsman has to do surety insurance. Pretty interesting stuff. Most people think of bail bondsman as Dog the Bounty Hunter. That's
Right.
the way that we know it. Generally, that's not how your bail bondsmen are going to work. The way it works in Montana is just that you either have in-state bail companies or you have out-of-state bail companies, but they have physical offices, the out-of-state ones do, in places like Billings or Missoula or Kalispell or Great Falls. And then they hire bail agents who have to be licensed with my agency in the state of Montana and have to pass testing and background checks and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So I have a question then. These individuals are held to a higher standard? Is that the way that we should be viewing these people, that they are, they should be held to this level where they have lots of responsibility and therefore they should be held to a higher standard, I guess?
Yeah, from your office's perspective, I know you license them. So what does that mean for the consumer side?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's you stated it well, Stacy. Yeah, essentially, bail bondsmen are part of the criminal justice system. They play a role, an important role in that, and they, in that capacity, are officers of the court and the justice system, and so their conduct is held to a higher standard. I am tasked by the Montana legislature with regulating the provision of an insurance and to protect the public from harm based on insurer conduct. And of course, as we talked about, bail bondsmen fall within that purview. And so I have the authority to regulate, to license, regulate, and then to punish bail bondsmen who run afoul of the law. And that includes the ability to strip them of their license and to fine them civilly, and then to refer them for criminal prosecution.
Fascinating stuff. So let's get into the case. So this is Louis Ikeda, based here in Billings, Montana, Yellowstone County bail bondsman. Talk to us about the background of this case and what happened.
Yeah, this is unfortunate for Mr. Ikeda, but it's also unfortunate for the bail industry. This is your typical sex for services type case. So Mr. Ikeda was a Billings bail bondsman, Montana licensed insurance producer. He was accused by us, the state auditor's office, of exploiting women in custody by reducing or covering bond amounts in exchange for sex. And then he was also falsifying bond-related records because he was the one that was paying the bond amount in exchange for sexual favors. And more specifically, what he was doing was, while he was working here in Billings, he was soliciting and engaging in sexually explicit communications with female inmates at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility. We focused on 3 particular women as part of our investigation. Obviously, I'm not going to give their names. And we found as part of that investigation that Mr. Ikeda engaged in bond fraud, forged bond certificates, was soliciting women for sex, and unfortunately in one case actually convinced the woman to have sex, and was leveraging, unfortunately, the circumstances of the ladies that were in incarceration to benefit himself. We caught on to this. We referred this investigation to the feds, the U.S. attorney in Montana, and at this point, the good news for citizens of Yellowstone County and Montana is this gentleman has been convicted and is awaiting sentencing as of the time of this podcast.
Oh my goodness. So many questions here. So many questions. First of all, how did he get access to them to even have these discussions? Like, at what point does that conversation happen? Or is it a conversation?
Well, it was certainly a conversation. As bail bondsman, you'd obviously have access to persons that were incarcerated that were looking in order to get bailed out. And you'll often find in the jails that the bail bonds literally advertise their services and provide a phone number at the jail or the detention facility for people to call, right? This gentleman had been working as a bail bondsman, and at some point, he determined that he was going to use his position to start convincing women that he would get their bail amount reduced, if you will, in exchange for favors.
Unfortunately, in this scenario, the victims and the target, the subject, was able to make connection. And then was his downfall of communicating. It's actually, he's using a facility to interstate commerce to aid racketeering. And that's what he got pretty much in trouble for. General crime can be up to 5 years. Violent crime can be up to 20 years. So it'll be interesting to see how the courts view his activity.
So how did he originally get in touch with the ladies, and how did those interactions truly begin?
Yeah, so our investigation revealed that Ikeda first came in contact with his victims through a communication system in the jail's NCIC messaging system, where you can communicate as an incarcerated person with bail bondsmen. And then post that, once these ladies were released from custody, then communications occurred through private cell phones at that point.
Okay, Stacey, do you have any background or information on that particular system?
Well, the NCIC system is basically it's a tool that if family members, bail bondsmen want to actually communicate to the prisoner, there's monies placed on the books of the prisoner, and then they can sit down in front of a camera and communicate with whomever, but it is recorded, and it can later on, obviously in this case, be utilized against the victims or used against the individual that's creating the crime.
Oh, absolutely. So it's recorded and documented, and it's there.
Yes.
Okay.
It's recording. It sits in a system where if you need to pull that up, it is there. And prisoners do know that they are being recorded. So this is not something like Big Brother is actually recording them illegally. You go into this system knowing that you are being recorded, and it will be shelved for a period of time.
So who actually found the communication? I mean, is that inside the jail? Is that your office? Where is that reported? How does that come about?
Yeah, so this gentleman got caught in a couple different ways. Unfortunately for Ikeda, some of these ladies had reported to their parole officers that this guy was a bad guy and was engaging in bad conduct. And in addition, and I'm very pleased to say this, is that we had both jailers and employees of this company reach out to us as an agency to say, hey, this guy is a bad guy. You need to investigate him. So he wasn't very careful, apparently, in his activities because multiple people were onto his activities. But essentially, the way that the investigation and prosecution started is that because we regulate bail bondsmen, we started the investigation, then worked with the Montana Department of Corrections, as you can imagine, and their investigator. We also worked with the county attorney for Yellowstone County on this. And then ultimately, as we stated, we started working collaboratively with the U.S. Attorney for the state of Montana, which is on the federal side. We're the state side, and of course the feds are the ones that brought this under federal law, which is a good thing in many ways because the penalties that Stacey walked through here are much higher on the federal system than they would be on the state system. So to date, we have, as the agency, of course, taken this gentleman's license. He can't be a bail bondsman anymore, but for his purposes, he has been convicted of facility and interstate commerce and native racketeering after paying a woman's jail bond in exchange for sex, and he is waiting to be sentenced at this point in time.
Well, what's interesting in the community, in the jails and stuff, it's a small community, and people talk. And so if you see one person something, people are watching. And if this individual got out and they know that she didn't pay what she needed to pay, then there's going to be questions and there's going to be feedback. And then, so that piece of information obviously was fed to other females, and then it became a snowball effect. And then he eventually got caught. But the jailhouse, very, very small community. You can't cover anything up.
Do you think that it was only 3 cases? I mean, are we to the bottom of this, or it's still being investigated?
Well, I would say the investigation portion has ended because he's subject to criminal prosecution. I suspect there are other victims as a result of this conduct that haven't come forward, but we know of the 3 for sure. Now, the interesting thing about this is that I can say, without giving details, we are investigating a very, very similar type scheme in a different part of the state right now. It is absolutely incredible that apparently this is not an uncommon occurrence in Montana, particularly in the bails and bonds industry.
Same thing.
Same.
Another area, bail bondsman.
You just set a arrow across the state. Now people that hear this can go, okay, let's check. We need to make sure that our business is clean.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, this was just such a big abuse of authority. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about why this case really matters? I mean, obviously, this is personal. It's a struggle for women that were incarcerated and dealing with this type of conduct. But also, just why does this case matter to your office and certainly Montana?
Yeah, power imbalance. You just nailed it right there. These women were in the custody of the state or Yellowstone County. The criminal justice system is structured as such that they were dependent on a bondsman for release. That created an imbalance of power between the bail bondsmen and those that were under criminal investigation and arrest. Coercion concerns. Clearly, what this does is erode the confidence. In a case like this, erodes the confidence of the public in the criminal justice system, which is bad for everybody, to say the least. It's bad for the consumer protection side because we had bad actors operating in Montana in a professional capacity, which undercuts the whole industry itself. There's parallel state and federal consequences. You have the same conduct that is implicating both federal law and state law. And as I stated, the public trust in the justice system is the big one. The harm here extended beyond the individual victim to trust in courts, the detention system, and licensed financial intermediaries. I mean, the good news here for the public is that, this gentleman was identified and he was caught and he's prosecuted and he's going to go to jail. But unfortunately, what we are seeing more and more as the regulator of bail bondsmen is that this conduct isn't isolated in the bail bonds industry. We saw the situation that happened in Missoula, Montana recently, where a gentleman who was out on bail was shot to death at a convenience store in Missoula, Montana, just in March of this year by 4 individuals who weren't properly licensed with the state of Montana. 2 of those individuals, in fact, didn't even have a license and were involved in the apprehension and weren't being properly supervised. And so what this has resulted in is that my office is taking unprecedented action, and that we literally suspended the operating practices of one of the largest bail bondsman companies in the state of Montana, an entity known as Mr. Bail Inc. And we got a great story about Mr. Bail Inc. that we can talk about here shortly as well. There are national implications to that company. And then we obviously suspended the temporary licenses of the 2 individuals that had licenses, and we're investigating and referring for prosecution the individuals that killed this other gentleman. And so we are now doing rulemaking to even better strengthen our oversight over the bail industry, and we should be coming out with those shortly. But we've come a long way in the state in terms of regulating the bail industry. This used to be Wild West stuff in the state of Montana. Your listeners may remember just 4 or 5 years ago, a similar situation in Butte where bail bondsman killed a guy in Butte, and my predecessor, Troy Downing, went to the 23 legislature and basically put in laws that gives us even more authority to regulate this. And we're going to go to the 27 legislature and put in even more laws to better regulate these guys. I mean, this is stuff out of like the vigilante days of Montana. We don't want that back again.
Yeah, a bail bond is supposed to get you out of jail, not put you on a Dateline episode, right?
And unfortunately, I mean, these individuals that are in jail, they're vulnerable. Whether they have drug use and they're still withdrawing, they're vulnerable. Whether they've been there and they do not like their environment, their food, how they're sleeping, if they're threatened inside jail, they're vulnerable. They want to get out. So these 3 women that were in there, shame on him for what he did, because we don't know the circumstances, but they are considered victims. These individuals looking for a way to get out, we don't know that circumstances of what was going through the mind, but the fact is that he was that emboldened to do this type of action and continue it back to back to back. That says a lot. And I would love to peel back the onion to determine, is this an isolated chapter in his life, or did something lead and build up and he continued on? So, I mean, we may never know, but the fact is that also it's going across the state, these activities, then there is a lot of communication among these individuals that, but this agency here, now that this has been highlighted, these other individuals in other parts of the state are not going to be able to get away from it like they have been.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's almost like they were convincing themselves that potentially the rules didn't apply to them.
Correct.
Yeah, it is symptomatic, I think, of what's happening in our society, where I think we're seeing more and more examples of where people either believe that the law doesn't apply to them, or they've come to the point in their own personal morals where they just don't believe that the way they act is inappropriate type behavior. But the interesting thing in regards to that is that when we did the investigation and looked at the messaging between Ikeda and some of his victims, he did even acknowledge in writing that this was inappropriate conduct and that he could be subject to being sanctioned. It's just unbelievable. And an incredible connection and twist. So the company that was involved with the Missoula shooting and the death of that individual is Mr. Bale Inc. And the owner of Mr. Bale Inc., you can't make this stuff up, is a guy out of Virginia. Okay. And Mr. Bale, he is also being investigated, his company, by multiple jurisdictions, if you can believe it. But for those that follow the January 6th saga and recall the pipe bombs that were laid out in front of the RNC and the DNC, and they couldn't figure out for years and years and years who did that, unbelievably, that was Mr. Bale's son. That was the individual that was identified as the pipe bomber.
Interesting. Wow. That is an interesting twist.
That is a twist. You just pulled that yarn on that sweater. Let's see what else is going to unravel pretty soon.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I'm sure we're going to uncover in future episodes other professional licensures where, maybe there's some questions. But obviously, these professional services need to have professional boundaries. So I'm so grateful that, this heart-tugging personal story has a happy ending where we can, make sure that we're holding the right people accountable in situations like this. So great job.
Ultimately, this shows the benefit of licensure and regulation of industry, right? I know folks get frustrated oftentimes with the state requiring certain professions to be licensed and regulated, but this is the very reason why it is it's a consumer protection piece. So the consumer or the customer knows that the entity that they're dealing with, whether it's somebody who does home repair or a licensed insurance agent or a bail bondsman, that they're properly trained, if you will, and licensed with the state, so you can trust the work that's been done. And if the standards of conduct, as you stated, don't meet the level that we would otherwise require from a profession, that there's actual sanctions and consequences as a result of this. This speaks to the need of the importance of regulatory schemes and oversight. There are bad actors out there, and they want to do bad things to people, usually for a pecuniary benefit. But in this case, the Ikeda case, it was obviously for sexual gratification, and there needs to be consequences for these guys. And that's what a lot of what Stacy did in her professional career.
You got it. I couldn't say it any better. Even though I'm a former Fed and I do not like authority and regulation and all that stuff, this case does highlight the fact that there needs to be oversight. And unfortunately for this individual, I mean, it's going to stem from his actions. It's going to change how this state is going to start viewing these companies, and it's time to clean up the business.
Yeah, absolutely. When payment arrangements suddenly involve secrecy, gifts, pressure, personal favors, those are just red flags. We just have to encourage people to stop it, document it, report it.
Bingo.
Well, thanks for joining today's episode, and we'll look forward to our future episodes. Thank you so much for joining today.
The Office of the State Auditor, Commissioner of Securities and Insurance, is tasked with protecting and advocating for Montana consumers, investigating and prosecuting bad actors, informing the public through education and outreach, and promoting business growth and capital formation in the Treasure State. For more information or to contact the Commissioner's office, visit csimt.gov or call 406-444-2040.